Now the next thing we're going to do is actually a little bit tricky, but not too tricky. Basically, to really make sure this looks like it's in the scene, we're going to make sure that some of these grass goes over the top of the floor and wood frame. Okay, so we're going to right click the background and duplicate it, and let's call this grass. Now what we're going to do with this layer is we're going to drag it to the top of our layers. Once it's there, we're going to set a mask on it, add layer mask, and you'll notice a little symbol occurs there. We're going to now click on the paintbrush, the brush tool, and we're going to set the colors to black and white. Now to do that, you click on this little symbol here. So even if you had a different color in there, like red, I could go over and click that and it would go to black and white. So now that I've got black and white, what I want to do is black will delete some of the scene and white will bring it back. So what we're going to do, we're going to switch the white and black. So we're going to click on this. So that little symbol just switched black to the foreground, and we're going to right click the screen and make it bigger, and we're just going to delete this whole area, and you'll start to see the floor come back. Now once the whole floor has come back, we're going to continue. What we're going to do is we're going to switch it again, so white is now in front. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the edge and we're just going to bring some of that grass, just the tips of the grass, so it goes over our floor. And it's going to add a little bit of realism to the scene, make it look like the floor is on the ground. Not too much, just a little bit. And just on the edges here. There we go. A little bit more over here. Okay, it looks more like it's sitting flush on the ground. And how we've done that is using a mask. So the black is covering up a particular area and the white is allowing that area to be seen. Okay, we're ready to continue now. So basically the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put up the walls. So we'll put up this wall first, and then we'll put up this wall, and then we can look at doing some other things. So we're going to go to File, Place, Embedded, and I've got something similar to the floorboards. Looks like that. We're just going to bring that in. Now we're going to duplicate these as well and also stretch it up. You can see these floorboards are one piece that go all the way up. So we're going to try and match it as best we can. So what we can do is hit enter, and then we can right click and duplicate this, and then get the moving tool and just move it up. Now once we've done that, we can do what we've done before. Highlight both of them, hold Control on a PC or Command on a Mac, right click and rasterize the layers, and then right click and merge the layers. Once we've done that, we can hit Command T on a Mac or Control T on a PC, and we can start to actually distort this. So we can right click and hit distort, and then we can start to piece these corners to the floor. Now, if I have a look at the original image, we want to get it pretty high, and then we're going to cut it off to create the triangular shape here at the top. Now, my floorboards, or the wall boards I should say, are a little bit too thick, so what I'm thinking of doing, I might actually duplicate it again so it's a bit wider. So I'm going to hit escape, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to duplicate it one more time, and I'm just going to move it over to the right like this, and I'll merge those two layers again. Okay, let's Control T or Command T, right click and distort, and let's try that again. Hopefully this time it looks a little bit more realistic. Let's bring those things in. Looks a little bit better. I'm going to make that a lot taller. Okay, so if I have a look, we want it to be as tall as we can get it, because we're going to chop the sides off soon. Okay, so I might just get it high and make sure those two are connected to the floor, and if we're happy with it, hit enter on the keyboard. Very good. Next thing I want to do is get this side wall right here, this one. So we're going to go File, Place Embedded, or Place, and we're going to get the wall again. Now this wall has more panels going wide, but it's not as high. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hit enter, and I'm just going to duplicate it, right click, duplicate layer, hit OK, and just move it over like that. And then I'm going to highlight them both, right click and hit rasterize. Computer enhanced speaking. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was for Drew's thing, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay. I'm pretty sure it was the pink ribbon, the morning tea thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Bye. So we're going to rasterize them, and then we're going to merge them. We're going to hit Control T or Command T, right click and hit distort, and we're going to do the same thing here. Going to just get these points and match them up. And obviously we need to get that as close to that point as we can, and move that in. Now this one isn't going to be as high, but we do need to make sure it's exactly how it is here. So basically the roof of the house is going to come over that wall, so it doesn't really matter, but just don't make it too high. And it does go straight up and straight up, and there's a bit of an angle, and that angle is parallel to the bottom angle. So we're just going to make sure that this angle is the same as the bottom one. And that's looking pretty good at the moment. Might just make it a little bit higher and then hit enter on the keyboard. Okay. It has spilled over a little bit, but that's okay. We can always fix that up later. Cool. The next thing we're going to do is obviously change the colors. We're going to burn it. We're going to use the sponge tool, and we're also going to use the dodge tool. So before we do that, let's highlight both walls and right click and let's merge them. After we have merged them, let's go up to image and let's go to adjustments. We're going to go to hue and saturation, and we're just going to change the saturation. We're going to bring that down a little bit and a little bit more. Also make it a little bit darker and hit OK. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to go over to the burn tool, and the best thing to do is probably burn the areas where the floor is, burn the areas where the roof is going to be, but we can always do them later as well. So I'm just going to do this corner down here. I'm going to do this area, and I'm just going to adjust the size of this. Okay. Now the next thing we want to do is right click and get the sponge tool. Now what the sponge tool is going to do, so right click the screen and adjust the size of the sponge tool. Sponge tool will desaturate a particular area, so remove the color from it. So any areas that are too colorful, you might want to just use the sponge tool and desaturate it. Just remove the color from that area. Okay, and then the dodge tool. Now you can see that because there's a lamp, this wall here, especially around this window, is quite light compared to this wall. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the dodge tool and the burn tool. We're going to use the dodge tool on this wall, so we're going to just adjust that size, and we're just going to lighten up this wall a little bit. There we go. And then this wall here, we just want to burn it a little bit. Now, not too much. We don't want it too dark, but a bit of a contrast from one wall to another. Excellent. Now, before we continue, we're going to look at putting in the roof and the windows, etc. One thing we want to do is mask some of our imperfections. And we're going to use this wood frame. And we're going to make our one white as well. And we're going to put it around certain areas, and it's going to hide some of the imperfections. And before we do that, we're going to bring in the door and the windows. So let's go File, and then go to Place Embedded or Place, and let's look for the door. Now what you can do with the door straight away is move it to that particular area, and then what you can do is go right click and distort, and you can try and place this as best you can. Now try and make it as close to this as possible, so the right side is quite high up, and the left sides are down, so the angle of it should be down, and I might make it a little bit taller. Don't forget, we are going to have a window next to it, so it should be further to the left, so don't forget that. bring that down. And when you're happy with it, let's hit enter. Now, obviously, we don't want a red door. This door is blue. It's completely up to you what you want to do. And also, if you want the door handle on the other side, then it's pretty easy to flip. We should have actually done that originally, but I'll show you that by bringing in a new door. Basically, if you want it to flip around, right from the get-go, just right-click and then hit flip horizontally, and then you've got the door handle on the other side. So if you wanted the door handle on the other side, that's probably the best way to do it. Okay, let's continue. We're going to adjust the hue and saturation on this. So image, first thing we're going to do is actually rasterize it. Remember to rasterize your images, and this will allow you to edit them. So we go to image, adjustments, hue and saturation. We're going to try and make it as close to the original door as possible. So nice bluish color we're looking for. Something like something that looks realistic. Really, that's what you're going for. And I'm just going to hit OK on that. That looks okay. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is bring in the window. And I've got a small window, I've got an attic window, and I've got a large window for this wall. So we're going to bring them in one at a time. So let's go File, Place Embedded. What we'll do, we'll leave the attic window until we set the roof. So first thing we want to do is get the window single and hit Place. And we're just going to place that here. Now, I guess it's about time we could actually show you a different tool. Now, if you want to keep using distort, you can, and distort is quite fine. You can just distort this and get your angle correct. But there is another way, and that way is if I go File, Place Embedded, and I bring that window in, you can go right click and you can go Perspective. Now what Perspective does, it actually will change the whole angle of the window sill. So what you can do is bring it up like so, and that can start to get your angle going straight away. Oh, it should be the other way actually. Let's do that again. File, Place Embedded. Perspective, and we'll just lift that up. And because of the different angle we have here, we will need to adjust that. So if we go right click distort, let's try that again. There we go. Now some of you guys might be thinking, well, that's not a window because I can see the wood through there, and that's fine. We're going to fix that up as well. It's not a problem. So let's have a look at that. It's probably about exactly how we want it, which is good. And we're going to right click and hit rasterize so that we can continue. Okay, we've got the big window next, so we're just going to bring that big window in here. I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, and I found a window that is double the size of that, and we can just rotate it around and do a distort on that. Probably about right there, and we can hit enter on that. There we go. Could be a little bit too big, so I'm just going to adjust the size a little bit. There we go. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do is pop that wood frame around, and that's going to help mask a lot of the things, the imperfections, and we're going to cast some shadows and stuff like that. But before we do that, let's actually make these windows look like windows. So the last thing we've got to do is rasterize that last layer. And what we're going to do just for now, although we're going to change it up later, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to this button here. It's the new layer button. It's next to the recycling bin. Create a new layer. And it's probably a good idea at this point to name our layers, rename some of them. So this new layer that we've just brought in, we're going to call this glass. And if we go down, we might just rename this one and call it walls. And that's the door, obviously, so that's cool. Okay, everything else looks pretty good. Now, what we're going to do with glass, we need this to be underneath the particular window. So this is going to be the glass for this window here. So I'm just going to drag that underneath that window. So this is a single window. I've dragged glass underneath that layer. Once it's underneath that layer, what we're going to do is just grab the paintbrush and make sure you're on that glass layer. Get the white paint bucket color, the paint color, and we're just going to resize that. And all I want you to do is just paint white in there for now. And we're going to make this look more like glass, and where you can see the outside and stuff like that later. But for now, just paint white in it. Now, if you go over, that's fine. Just grab the eraser, which is this tool here, and just erase around. And because you're only on that layer called glass, nothing else is going to get erased. The next thing you want to do is you actually want to create one more layer and call it glass. And you want to put that underneath the window double, so this one here. And now that it's underneath window double, we can go over to the paintbrush, get white again, and just start painting that area white. Now this is how layers work. If something is on top of another thing or another layer, it's going to show on top. So for example, if I move this glass layer on top of the window double, that's what you get. Basically the white is on top of the window seal. So what we're going to do, we're just going to move that back up. So for now, that's how we want the windows to look, but obviously later on we can make them look a little bit better. Okay, let's have a look at the next thing. We're going to do the wood frames. So let's go File, Place Embedded, and it's called Wood Frame, and it's just a singular piece of wood. It's the thing that we made the frames down here with for the floors to make it look thicker. Now, what we're going to do is quite interesting actually. We're going to put a frame all the way along this wall, all the way around the door, all the way up this frame here, down, and then up this frame here. So we're going to make it thinner and start to piece it together. So bit of construction now. It doesn't have to be perfect, but try and get it as close as you can, and then we can always adjust them later. You can even do a distort if you like. Now the wood frame isn't that thick, so just be careful. You don't want it to be too thick, but have a look at the original image and see what the thickness you want it to be. Cool. Once you've done one, what you can do is adjust the color of this immediately. So we're going to right click and rasterize that layer. And we're going to go to image adjustments, hue and saturation. The first thing I want to do is make it lighter and more saturated. So bring the saturation up and also the lightness up. So it goes sort of white. Now we want it, looks like a dull but pearlish white. So I'm going to try and adjust these colors as best as we can until we get that particular. It's looking pretty good there. So I've got saturation at about -71 and lightness at about +29. That looks pretty good for me. What I'm now going to do is right click and I'm going to duplicate the layers. And I'm going to duplicate them a lot and get the moving tool and just move them around and place them roughly where I want them to go. So I'll keep duplicating. Now the shortcut for duplicating on a PC is Control T, on a Mac it's Command T. Sorry, not T. The shortcut is Control J or Command J on a Mac. So what you can do is hit Command J if you're using a Mac or Control T and you will duplicate a layer and then you can just move it, hit Control T or Command T and just transform them. And what we want, we're just going to piece together a few of these. So just keep duplicating and we want some frames all the way around. So try and put as many as you can. Keep duplicating and we want them pretty much in a lot of different places. So just keep making them and we'll go back and we'll try and fix them up later. So one there. Let's have a look. You could put one around the window as well, but it's completely up to you. I probably won't do that. Okay, Now what we want to do is actually go in there and just fix up some of these points. So we want to find this particular layer. Now to do that, the best way to do that is by holding Control on your keyboard, or if you're using a Mac, holding Command down and then clicking on, and that will actually find that layer. Once you've found it, you can hit Control T or Command T, right click and hit Distort, and try and just move these points as best you can. Just move these points in and hit enter when you're done. Control or Command and click. So holding Control or Command down and clicking on a layer will select it, and then we can adjust it by doing Control T, Command T. Don't forget we need one here as well. Just make that smaller. Okay, that's looking okay so far. Let's see, this one is looking okay, and it's looking okay. Alright, and now we've got our frames in. What we're going to do is highlight those, so hold Control or Command down and select them all. And you only want to do this once you're finished, because you won't be able to readjust them afterwards. So we're going to right click and we're going to merge those layers. We can also rename that, and we can call them wall frame. Okay, before we put the roof on, what we might do is start populating stuff that's going to go on the floor itself. Now you want to do probably the welcome mat and then the carpet first, and then put things that are on top of those. So let's go ahead and bring those in. I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, and I've got a welcome floor mat. Now we're going to hit enter on that. You can see this particular image, it's got a white background that we need to remove. So before we do that, we need to right click and rasterize the layer. Now to remove this white, there's a couple of ways of doing it. Now many of the ways you can do it is probably using the magic wand tool. So that's the fourth tool down. Click on magic wand. Now what you do with magic wand is you click on one color and it will select that. Now you can see it's selected most of the white but hasn't come close enough to the carpet. Not as close as I wanted to. So that's where you adjust the tolerance. Now I'm going to increase the tolerance to about 40 or 50. And we're going to try and click again in there and see what happens. So I'm just going to right click and deselect the selection, and then I'm going to click it again. And it's a bit better, it's gotten a little bit closer. This is definitely right up to where I want it, but down here it's still a bit off. So we're going to increase the tolerance again. I'll bring it up to about 70. Let's deselect that and try it again. That's a lot better. We could keep trying, so I could probably throw it up to about 100 and see what happens.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
So you can see it's bled into the floor mat, so that's probably too high. So we're going to deselect that. We're going to bring it back down to about 80, and let's try it again. So it's probably good enough. We're going to hit delete on the keyboard. So hit delete, and we're going to right click and deselect the selection. We don't need that selection anymore. Get the moving tool, and we're going to hit Command T. We're going to make it smaller, and then what we're going to do is do a distort. So we're going to right click and hit distort, and we're going to place this carpet on the floor right in front of the door, just like that. And then hit enter on the keyboard to save it. Now there is one more thing we can do to make it even more realistic. There's some effects that you can apply on layers. Now to get that up, you right click on your layer and you go to blending options. Now in blending options, you got some really cool effects that you can apply to this layer. Now the effect we're looking for is a drop shadow. So I'm just going to enable drop shadow. Now you might not notice it, but I'll just zoom in. But with that enabled, there's a slight shadow that gets cast just underneath the carpet. Now you might not think that makes a big difference, but what you can do is select drop shadow, actually click on it, make sure it's selected, and then adjust some of its settings. So you can make the distance of the drop shadow so that it pulls away from the carpet a bit more. You can adjust the spread. You can also adjust the size. You can adjust the opacity so it's darker. So it's completely up to you what you want to do. I would probably keep it somewhere where it looks, realistic enough. I'm going to keep those settings. It's about 75 opacity, and distance is just under 10. Hit OK on that. Now, if you don't like the way the carpet looks, then you can always turn off the effects by clicking on the eyes here, and that will actually get rid of that effect. I think it makes it look a little bit more realistic, especially if you don't have the opacity so high. It makes a big difference. Okay, next thing we're going to do is bring in the carpet. So let's bring that in. Again, make it a little bit smaller and then do a distort on that. And just try and flatten that carpet as best you can. Now that carpet looks a bit thin, so I might just bring it up a bit like that. Hit enter to save, and then move it wherever you like. Now the carpet obviously is different, so if you want to change the color, we can. So we can go to image. We need to rasterize it first, and then we go to image adjustments, hue and saturation, and we were looking for like a bluish color, not so saturated though. And I think a little bit darker would do. Oh no, it is kind of light. I'm going to keep that. It's completely up to you how you want your carpet to look. And I hit OK on that. Looks like an old rug. Okay. We might as well bring in a couple of other pieces. The next things we'll do is bring in the bin and the papers, the desk and chair and the dog, and then we can start to piece together the drawings on the walls before we start to formulate the roof. Okay, so let's go File, Place Embedded. Let's start to bring in some of the other stuff. So we want the desk and chair. Now the same thing has happened here where we've got a white background, and so we're just going to right click rasterize. We're going to use the magic wand to try and get rid of that. So we're just going to, I just set it to about 60, click on the white and hit delete, and click on the white in these areas and hit delete as well on your keyboard. Just right click and deselect any selections you have at the end of that, and now you can move that exactly where you want. You may even want to just change the angle on it a little bit. We'll change the color on it as well, so image adjustments, hue and saturation, desaturate it a little bit, make it a little bit darker. You might even want to use the burn tool and just burn some of the areas so it looks a little bit more realistic.